Hello, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today and this very exciting panel where we will shine the spotlight on one of the films selected for the prestigious Cannes Premiere section, The End of It. I'm very pleased to be here with part of the production team, and there's some of the production team in the audience, I'm told, as well. So shout out to all of you. Congratulations on this incredible success. I am Denitsa. I'm director of the UK Global Screen Fund and BFI's international funds. And for those in the audience that are visually impaired, I am a white woman of Eastern European descent, using this opportunity to give a shout out to Bulgaria for winning Eurovision yesterday. Woo! For first time ever. I get to say that because I'm originally from Bulgaria. I am dark-haired with blue eyes. I am wearing a black top and a skirt which is alternating between green and black, so I'm very much in tune with the Pavilion colors. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the film that we will be talking about because it's actually premiering on Thursday, so I hope a lot of you will be able to stay and experience it live. And then I will introduce our panelists and we will have a very nice informal chat about what it takes to bring to the screen an ambitious, exciting debut. And they'll tell us a little bit more about what goes behind the scenes and the real work the producers do. So before we do that, let me introduce the film to you. So The End of It is set in a near future world where aging can be cured and death is now optional. Oh my God. And I'm saying near future, so that is also scary. Claire is a former provocative visual artist who's approaching her 250th birthday. A little bit older than me, not by much. And she decides she's had enough and she wants to die. Her decision stirs conflict with her husband, her daughter, and an AI assistant, revealing the humorous complexity of their relationships. As Claire uses her impending death to reclaim her role as an artist, she is forced to face what it really means to die, to live, and the messy absurdity of it all. You'll join me in appreciating that this is a very rich topic with incredible resonance. This film is written and directed by Martínez Bayona. This is her directorial debut, which we're very excited to have also been a small part of at the UK Global Screen Fund, together with a number of other financiers, and we'll dig into that in a second. So we also need to express our apologies that the director couldn't be with us today, because of the debut happening on Thursday. And also we have apologies from Adrià Mones Murlans, who's the producer from Spain, Fast and Films, who actually has a really good excuse. He's on a red carpet at the moment. But I'm very happy to have the rest of the production team. Now I want to introduce our wonderful panel. We have two of the producers. We have the UK producer, Elation Pictures. We have Emilie Jouffroy and Kamilla Kristiane Hodøl. I'm basically going to butcher everyone's name in this presentation, and they will forgive me because we're good friends. So Elation is recognized in Screen's Brit 50, The Ones to Watch in 2025. They also have recently opened a subsidiary in Norway, and they're focused on ambitious director-driven storytelling. Their slate includes The End of It, which we just saw a clip from, as well as the upcoming Foxfinder, and past titles include The Damned, which was also UKGSF supported, and Tides. We also have II Pictures, the Norwegian producing partner, and we have Dyveke Bjørkly Graver. Forgive me for the mispronunciation. And Dyveke's career spans a long time, worked across Cine Nord and Oslo Pictures, and in 2022 she started II Pictures together with her producing partner Andrea Berntsen Ottmar, and some of their titles you will recognize are The Worst Person in the World by Joachim Trier, 2 Oscar nominations, 2 BAFTA nominations, very well renowned. Sick of Myself, which premiered in A Certain Regard in Cannes, A Prayer for the Dying, which we were very ridiculously support as well from the UK Global Screen Fund, and we saw premiering in Berlin. I will ask them now a couple of questions and give them a chance to introduce themselves and also go through the visual description, which is an exciting extra challenge in their answers. But I wanted to start first with a question that takes you back to the beginning. How did this project originate, and how did each of you come on board, and what attracted you to the project? And I'll start with Emilie with a visual description.
So the visual description of myself, I am a white woman in my mid-30s, let's say. And your description was so evocative, Denise. I don't think I can match it. I have dark hair and I'm wearing a turquoise dress. Do we all do your visual descriptions, or do I just answer the question and then everyone can...
But you answered the question as well.
So how did the film first come together? Kamilla and I, who run Elation Pictures together, we met at the National Film and Television School in London, and that is also where we met Maria, who is the writer-director of this film, who is Spanish but based in the UK. She was the year below us at film school, and we just loved her work and thought her graduation short was really amazing and really wanted to find a project to do with her. And this project was something that she actually came up with originally as a pitch for a sort of competition or scheme thing that the school was running that sort of went nowhere, but then the idea stayed with all of us of, you know, really exploring this kind of utopian setting where, you know, what Maria describes as domestic immortality, where people get to sort of live indefinitely and don't die of natural causes, but really what does that mean for your day-to-day life, and what does it mean to kind of go through life without a sense of urgency or finality? So it kind of came back a few years later as a feature film idea that she was really excited about. We came on board immediately, and we actually started life on the iFeatures scheme, which sadly doesn't exist anymore, which at the time was run by the BBC, BFI and Creative England, and they were the first backers of this project at the early stages of development.
Thank you very much. Kamilla, is there anything you wanted to add to this question?
Okay. The visual description. So I'm also a white woman in my mid-30s. I have red hair, I wear a floral dress, and I have green glasses.
Well done.
Thank you. No, I think Emilie, it was just a no-brainer for us to come on board this project. It's such a distinctive idea, and I personally really love the idea of exploring what it means to be alive without death, because I don't think you can be one without the other, really, or at least that's the question the film poses. When you combine that question with Maria's shorts, not just her grad film, but she also after that made a fantastic short called Such Small Hands that also just showed how incredibly talented she is. So it was just a no-brainer. And she's a nice person, which is also a criteria for people we work with.
Dyveke.
Yeah, so visual description, I'm a white woman in my mid-40s, dark hair, dark eyes, in all black. And basically, I came on board this project. I went to London for this event between Norwegian and British producers, meeting, pitching projects, and having meetings to see if some collaborations could come out of it. And there I met Kamilla, and we had a meeting, and she pitched a project, which I found super intriguing. And basically, she asked us to read, and we saw the short that she was talking about, and we really just loved the script, and it was such an ambitious and interesting debut. And then we figured out a way to make it work with Norway.
So you started actually answering my next question that I was going to ask, which is, was the structure always envisioned as a co-production with Spain and Norway? And how did you decide which bits of the work each of you was going to do?
It was always envisioned as a co-production with Spain. That was baked into it very early on, because Maria is Spanish and because she really wanted the film to have this kind of sunny utopian setting. And so she always had the idea that it would probably make sense to shoot it in Spain. And so we brought on Adria, the Spanish co-producer who couldn't be here today, in the development process. So we were still really in the middle of writing the script when he joined the team, and he was sort of supporting from a distance while we kind of got the script ready. But we always knew it made sense because we could just, frankly, access quite a bit of money in Spain to support Maria as a first-time, female filmmaker from the country. And then the kind of Norwegian piece came into it a bit later, which I can let the others answer.
We knew we were shooting in Spain, as Emilie says, and that meant to us doing most of post-production in the UK, because we also knew that we would need to spend a fair bit of money in the UK and that we had partners there that wanted to support Maria and the project. But we quickly saw that the ambition of the project didn't match a budget from 2 countries, so we needed a little top-up. And I'm Norwegian, and we had just, as you said, set up this subsidiary, and then I knew Andrea a little bit from before, who's Dyveke's partner in II, and then pitched it to them because they felt like people we really wanted to work with in general. Again, nice people. And then it was quite easy to figure out. The creative element was a bit of casting, there was VFX that could also work in the region, which was a good move to tap into 2 different types of funding in Norway. And they have a fantastic sound designer that we were very excited to bring on board, amongst other things. Do you have something to add? No? Nothing? Okay.
So this relationship seems like it was very organic, and you almost instinctively knew what each would bring to the table. Do you have any advice for producers in the audience that are thinking about structuring a project and thinking about the best partner? What is it that you look for in a partner when you try to decide who's the best fit? And I think you already started answering that, or mentioned quite a few times that you need somebody that you could work with, that you trust, that's fun and that's dependable. But is there anything else you would add to that secret sauce of what makes a good partner?
I think the same motivation for making films, or at least the same motivation for making this film, and why you're doing it. And I think we were all very eager to support Maria and really wanted to do our very best to support. I mean, it's a very ambitious first feature. There's a lot of pressure. It's a really ballsy move by a first-time director, and we just really wanted to support her. And I think we all felt like our combined experience could protect her a little bit more than just one of us. And I think in general, people who also have similar tastes that see the same film, because it's not everybody. Yeah.
No, I think also it's good to, just besides the taste and like the first impression of shared values and stuff like that, just to spend some time together, because you're going to spend a lot of time together, and to make sure that you understand the project in the same way and that you share the director's vision, and especially with a debut like this, that you are able to bring on board the kind of framework that can support that director the whole way, and that the co-production can be like an addition to that and not step and kind of destroy what you're trying to build up for the director.
And as you said, this particular project is very ambitious. It touches upon a number of topics that are really live and subject to debate. It's the right time, the right place for the story to really engage with audiences. And the topics are many. It's the value of art, the value of family, what the meaning of life, and obviously society that's obsessed with technology and the role that technology plays in it, both in terms of extending life, but also the concept of family and belonging. It's quite a rich topic from area of topics from which to pick. As a kind of sci-fi set in the near future, but also a family story, how did you decide where to focus the attention? Obviously, as a sci-fi, dark, humorous story that's family and technologies, there's a lot of angles you could explore. Were there any pitfalls you were mindful you wanted to avoid from the beginning? A movie that you decided you were not making versus the movie you really wanted to make? How did you approach that choice of topics and focus?
I mean, Yes, it was definitely a lot of big themes, a real mix of tones and genres, which, as I think probably most of you in the room are producers, you can imagine it makes the process particularly challenging throughout development and kind of presenting the project to people, because you kind of have to be able to distill it to really kind of give people the idea of what the film is going to look and feel like. But we were always just guided by Maria, and Maria is she's a filmmaker who has a very strong sense of herself and what she's interested in and what she's not interested in. And ultimately, the film is really very, very centered around Claire's character, played by Rebecca Hall, and that was always the North Star. We weren't so interested in making a kind of big world-building sci-fi, even it's the kind of film where a lot of people would have their own questions, opinions, ideas on what, this future could look like. But Maria wasn't so interested in kind of leaning into that side of it. It always came back to what is Claire going through and what does it mean to her in this moment that, she has whatever, that she's 250 years old, the meaning of art, the kind of impact of technology on her life. It was really very much through that lens.
Yeah, I should also add, during development there were sometimes pressure, or not pressure, suggestions to explore how did we end up in this situation, how did this world come to be, can you explain the logic or the technology that's making this happen. That just wasn't interesting to us. It's not a film about that, and frankly some of this might be more real than other things right now, so we didn't really, in the X amount of years that we developed it became less and less relevant to answer that question anyway. And we think the only, all of these genres are just frameworks to explore something, and that was what was important to us.
And this is a question that I want to direct at Dyveke first of all, and then I'll come back to the others as well. You've worked with some very established directors, and this is a directorial debut, an ambitious one, with bigger budget, with a starry cast. What attracted you to this project in particular? How do you decide which debut is right for your company and your sensibility?
We do quite a few debuts as well, and I think it's always so hard to answer. I think it's a gut feeling type thing. I think in this case it was knowing the producers behind and trusting their taste and the fact that they had developed this, the project for a long time. And then it's of course watching shorts is always important. I think it's exciting to see someone who really wants to go there, who's brave, risk willing. It was a very, very ambitious script, but also with the budget that could carry it in a way. So we were just very excited from the start to come on board.
And Kamilla and Emilie, I'm going to ask you the same question, but you've already answered it in the beginning, so I'll change the nuance a little bit. So when you're working with debut directors, and you told us where you met, and literally you've been friends for a long time, you've watched Maria's career, but the first feature is a stressful time for a director, especially one that is high budget and a co-production, and there's a mix of financiers, there's a mix of talent agents involved. How do you protect the vision of a debut director? What kind of guardrails do you put in place to be able to support them best on this first big-scale feature?
Well, this is a big question. I think the first most important thing that you can do to protect the director's vision is to really try and understand it as deeply as you can yourself as a producer when you're in the kind of development stages of a film, and then to make sure that you are using the right tools to communicate it to other people. And, we had a very strong deck. We had Maria's shorts. Maria herself, when she's in a meeting with people, can talk very eloquently about her own vision. I think it can sometimes be very tempting, particularly for something like this, to sort of try and pitch it as more of a sci-fi than it is, or more of a just kind of lean into genre or lean into something that you feel might be perceived as more commercial. And I think we were trying very, very hard from the beginning to be really, clear and honest about what Maria's vision for the film was, and to get everyone on board with the film she was making and not the version of the film that they would have made with this premise. That doesn't mean the questions won't then come up during the shoot, during the edit, but a kind of starting from a point of everyone being involved in the project on the same basis, I think is the most important step.
Yeah, and I think we worked with Maria for many, many years in development, and I think just having a genuine, true trust in both directions, because a big part of our job becomes being a buffer and being a protector and a communicator on her behalf to a certain degree, and on the film's behalf, and you need to kind of be able to do that in a way that doesn't always need to kind of go through her or sense check with her, but that she knows that we've got her back and that we know what the project is. And I think that sounds really obvious and basic, but actually takes years and is incredibly important, I think.
Thank you. And as we saw a little bit in the clip, but probably didn't have a chance to see all of the cast, this debut has a very high-profile cast. We mentioned Rebecca Hall and the protagonist Laura of Claire, whose credits include The Prestige, Vicky Cristina Barcelona, Passing, which was also directed. There's also Noomi Rapace, who plays her daughter, and who's also starred in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Prometheus. We have Beanie Feldstein in Lady Bird, Booksmart, What We Do in the Shadow, American Crime Story, Impeachment. It's a really long list. Gael García Bernal, not least of all, Amores Perros, Tu Mama Tambien, The Motorcycle Diaries. This is a very, very strong cast. How did you go about in finding the right fit for the role, and how did you work with your casting who's in the audience? What was that process like, and how did it come together?
Yes, I will start by shouting out Suzanne, our very talented casting director, who's sitting there in the front row. To be perfectly honest, it was a bit of a lightning in a bottle moment, because the script, something about the script just really clicked, I think it's fair to say, with cast in general. We sent the script out to someone who was a very junior agent at WME, who had been tracking the project for years and really sort of begging to read it. And he loved it, and then it started to spread, and then all of a sudden everyone at WME had read it, and everyone at CAA had read it. And through them we got introduced to Suzanne and our other casting director, Ellen. And it also coincided with the SAG strikes, and so all these American agents were just sitting there on their hands with like nothing to do and just desperate to kind of talk to producers who had projects that weren't impacted by the strike. Anyway, so there was a kind of moment in time, but I think the strength of the script and of Maria's vision is what kind of carried that process. Rebecca was someone that we thought of from very, very early on for that role, because she's just so versatile and, such a talented actress, and, we felt could really capture all the facets of this character who basically carries the whole film. She's in, almost every scene of the film. And then building the cast around her was really exciting, and, the joy of working with someone like Suzanne is that there's ideas that come up that we hadn't thought of Beanie Feldstein to play a robot, frankly, but she was amazing, and she brought so much humor and warmth and humanity, ironically, to the character who's not technically human, and that was a really nice surprise in the casting process, for example.
Yeah, and I think it's also a really fun world to cast, because everybody kind of looks like they're in their early 40s or, around that age. So I think, for example, having spoken to Noomi about it, for her, getting to play Rebecca's daughter and even having a lot of meaningful, meaty scenes with an actress of her same age is not actually that common. And getting to do that was also a draw to really get to play with these fellow actors with such an interesting script in a family dynamic that you just normally wouldn't be able to do, because obviously Noomi is not technically possible for her to be Rebecca's daughter, but in our world it is. And I think to echo what Emilie was saying, but again, Rebecca did say this, that there was just something incredibly distinctive about the script, and a big, I just wanted to know who had written this, because I need to know that person. And that's when Maria comes in, and she is, despite being, a first-time director, or maybe because she's incredibly intelligent, really good at articulating the thoughts behind it in a way that I think drew in smart, intelligent actors who wanted to be a part of it. So, yeah.
It all helps if it's set in the near future and you could be 250 years old. Some creative choices are actually freed up by the script, which is really interesting nuance. Obviously, the choice of location is also important. And we saw a glimpse of Spain, and the project was shot in Spain. Can you tell us a little bit more about that choice and working with Fasten? Were they on set? Were you all on set? How did that location, what part did location play in this?
We shot, specifically in the Canary Islands in Tenerife, again for that sort of sunny feeling, and they have, the advantage of shooting in the Canary Islands is that they have actually a sort of incredible range of landscapes, all in a very kind of close proximity to each other, and what was important to Maria from a location and kind of production design standpoint, and our production designer Lily Abraham did a really fantastic job in this respect, was that the film, she didn't want the film to really look like a conventional sci-fi, sort of all kind of gleaming, metallic, the sort of image you might associate with sci-fi in your mind. She wanted it to have a very lived-in, textured feeling. And so, the location that you kind of caught a glimpse of in the clip is the main house where a lot of the film is set, and that was a sort of, very old family home, actually. And, there are some locations in the film which are a bit more futuristic, but we just really wanted that balance. And that was something else that we really kind of looked for when we chose where we were going to shoot, was to have a possibility of finding these types of older, really lived-in locations, and some things that can really kind of signal a little bit more that you're in a heightened futuristic world. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And perhaps the question that most of the audience is waiting for, which is, how do you put together this type of complicated debut with a lot of public funding? We should acknowledge there's also BBC, we have the Spanish ICA, we have the Norwegian Film Institute. So there's different pieces of public financing as well as private financing. Tell us more about the financing journey, how you put it together, and how all of these elements came to work together. And I think it's also a co-production under the European Convention, if I'm correct. So you also had to make sure you structure it in a way, both creatively and financially, to fit in a certain framework. Was that challenging as well?
Yeah, I think the key thing, as Emilie mentioned earlier, was that this was always going to be a co-production. And in fact, all the films that we do are co-productions, or have been so far. So it's just always a part of the early conversations with the director to kind of explain what that might mean in terms of when you're looking for HODs, when you're looking for cast. And of course, each country will have their own requirements, or each funds will have their own requirements. So you have to kind of try and get a sense of what that might mean for the film very early, so that you still feel like you can put together the creative team of HODs in a way that feels right for the film, not just kind of ticking the boxes for a nationality or a fund. And we did that. It was quite early. Even you guys came on quite early, and it was all about kind of how can we get enough points in each country, but still, who's the best people in Norway to be part of this film? Is it sound? Is it VFX? Is it costume? Or and then we did that across the board. And then I'm looking at Susanne again. We also cast out of Norway, and we cast out of Spain, and the casting team had a spreadsheet of requirements of where they had to, how many people from what places. But again, always very creatively led, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's also what made it very attractive to the Film Institute, because it didn't really scream Norwegian co-production from the beginning. It's not really natural like Norwegian element there, but I think because we came on board so early and we started the creative discussions at an early stage, it was possible to actually go there and cast Norwegian actors and have these conversations to find the right HODs quite at an early stage of the project, and this made it very attractive to the Film Institute, because then we had strong people connected, and I think for them also that it was a very international film, big stars, as you say, in English language. It's not normal kind of Norwegian GoPro, so they came on board with a quite high amount compared to what they usually do, and then also to be able to find the right regional elements, and working with a fantastic VFX house that's based in the region that led to regional financing as well.
Yeah, and in terms of Spain, and obviously combining a lot of different funds to make this happen. You mentioned, yes, we had BBC Film involved, and they did develop the project with us. And then we knew quite early that by shooting everything in Spain, and specifically the Canary Islands, we would tap into the tax credit there, but it also meant that we would structure the film as a majority Spanish, which, for those who don't know, but at least the UK, the way we certify films, the spend and the creative spend and the financing kind of need to match. So once you start shooting everything abroad and having largely Spanish team on the ground, you pretty quickly have to establish them as the majority. And that allowed us to then tap into the UK Global Screen Fund, thank you very much, as a minority UK co-production of our own film. And I guess on top of those pieces, it was still very obvious that we needed commercial money or private money, or call it, equity, if you will. And at that point, of course, the cast and the sales numbers, and really kind of making sure that there is some level of safety for these financiers coming on board a first feature that's tonally so experimental in its way. So that's where the cast really comes.
And you're also working with Bankside, who is the sales agent on this project. And you already mentioned cast, which is obviously very attractive. How did they come on board? And were there any choices that they helped you make artistically in the financing or in the casting?
I think they came on board when the cast was already pretty complete. Yeah. Actually, on this particular one, I mean, it's different on every film, but on this particular one, because as I kind of alluded to earlier, WME in the States was so across it from very early on, and so instrumental in the kind of first bit of momentum that we had with casting. They were the kind of ones who were across it from the earliest. They're selling North America. I don't know if everyone knows this, but the agencies in the States also all kind of sell films domestically, and that they kind of have an arm of the companies that do that. And then Bankside came on board, when the package was pretty complete, but we were still in the very early stages of financing, and they were definitely useful partners in terms of discussing the kind of finance plan and how best to structure it, and in being, as Kamilla said, a source of reassurance to have such a well-established sales agency on board for the commercial investors in the film.
Yeah, we should also add a shout out to WME. They also helped us raise some of the commercial money, and introduced us to people. So they really, really backed us on this one.
And for those producers in the audience that are working with a debut director and they're trying to figure out when is the right time to attach a sales agent. Obviously, in what you just described, it was towards the end. Is that your advice to them? Like what elements do you think you should have in place to make that conversation with a sales agent meaningful?
I mean, to be honest, we still have this conversation on every project because I don't think it's one size fits all. I think it really depends on how you think you're going to get your film financed. And, you know, if you think it's going to be cast dependent, then it probably is quite useful to start conversations with sales agents sooner rather than later, even if they're informal conversations. But when you're starting the casting process, to get a bit of a steer from them about what cast they think is going to be meaningful to help get the sales estimates that you need to finance the film, because you, as an independent producer, you know, don't necessarily have the same day in, day out talking to buyers, knowing what casts kind of work for what territories and all that kind of thing. So whereas if you think that your film is going to be financed without any cast attached and that it's, you know, going to go sort of be financed 100% through public funding and that no one is asking you to bring meaningful cast on board, then you might have a conversation with your funders. What's the right time? You know, I think most people would probably tend to say it's still going to be before the shoot and when you're sort of at packaging stages, because then the sales agent can really help you think ahead to marketing and what materials you're going to need to get during the shoot, making sure you get the right assets, starting to think about positioning early on. But there's also plenty of people who wait until they have a finished film to attach a sales agent, and there's also plenty of sales agents who, when it comes to debuts, you know, not that interested in boarding at the script stage and would rather see at least some footage. So I really think it's project dependent.
Yeah, I would add that sometimes if you can wait, it can also be helpful in terms of being able to show footage and making sure that everyone really understands the film, that they come on board and that they can be the most enthusiastic about it amongst a busy slate. So sometimes that can also be a benefit.
Yeah, I think, as they said, it's very project dependent. I think it's budget dependent for sure. And I think it also differs between UK and maybe in Norway, because we usually have to show market money in place to get national funding for some projects. And I would just say that the one rule to follow is to never send a script you're not happy with or doesn't feel really well developed, because with the debut, especially if the director hasn't had shorts traveling all over and people like knocking at your door, they will read it only once, and that's kind of...
That's great. I have many more questions, but I'm aware of time and I want to give the audience the opportunity to also ask questions. So I'll ask one last question before I open to the audience. When you think back on this experience of the film and the production or the development process, is there anything that was unexpected or that you would now, with the benefit of hindsight, have done differently? And it could be a different answer for each of you.
There's definitely lots of unexpected things. There's very few that we can't really talk about. But I mean, listen, I think the truth is on every co-production, there are going to be unexpected things. We try, because we've been through a few co-productions now, we try very hard at the beginning to be very proactive in our communication and to really lay out, this is how we're used to working, these are the things that you sort of have to understand about the UK, and there are lots of things that are different in the UK compared to continental Europe in terms of how we finance films and close films and financier expectations. And then there's lots of things that are different on the continent about how their financing works and their, you know, crew and hiring practices and anything you can think of. So we try and really kind of flesh all of that out very early on in the process, but inevitably there's things that come up along the way that, you know, you hadn't anticipated, that can have an impact on your film. I can't think of like the best example to give here, but it just comes up on every film, doesn't it? That you know, you're standing on set and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that actually, you know, the shooting hours were this, and it's like, how I thought we'd spoken about this. How did we not, you know, figure out? So we had about 1 million of those kinds of things happen on this film that we just had to kind of figure out as we went and roll with the punches. But that is just the nature of bringing two filmmaking cultures together and trying to make them fit in the best possible way.
Yeah, and I think the problem or the challenge, I guess, is that nobody knows what they don't know. And if you're going in, you try to kind of explain exactly, oh, in the UK we're used to these shooting hours, we're used to these kind of crew sizes or rhythms, and cast have these expectations, etc. And the more you co-produce, the more you get used to stating what seems obvious, because it's obvious to you, but it's not obvious necessarily to the partner that you're working with. And then you have to try and get them to do the same thing. And at this point, it's not just about your producing partners, it's about, you know, the line producer, and it's about every HOD and kind of understanding. And the other thing that I would say, which we've also come across a few times, I mean, Emilie mentioned hiring practices, and there are big differences between, you know, labor protection and at what point crew needs to be booked, for example, or at what point you greenlight films. I think the Anglo-Saxon way is quite... We're used to things really going down to the wire, and then we press go and everybody has to jump in and go ahead. Whereas if you're shooting in a country where there's limited crew, or where there's just really that's just really different, and that they're used to kind of a green light that has very little to do with the legal closing, which is what we're used to. So those things do have big domino effects and fun surprises along the way.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think we already had the experience of closing. So it's not specific for this project, but I think that was really, really a shocking surprise to me. The first
UK closing.
Yeah. Because this is very, very different in Norway. As you said, we greenlight in a very, it's not by far the
more
same.
fluid.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for any UK producer working with another European producer who's not worked with the UK before, assume that they have no idea about this process, and that you need to explain, and so they know what to expect, because it can be quite a hurdle if they are not aware.
Yeah, and I would add, not just explain, it's your responsibility as the UK producer to navigate it. I would say, I think that's what we did on this one. Of course, Dyveke, Adria, they were across it and would attend the meetings that was needed. But at that point, I think the trust between co-producers are incredibly important. It would be incredibly labor-intensive for Dyveke to dig into all the same detail of closing that I did or Emilie did. And it really isn't necessary if you already trust each other. And I think you have to look at it as a slightly more formal side of another thing that you trust your co-producer to deal with, as long as there's transparency and, of course, some contracts that everybody has to read.
Thank you. We have some questions in the audience. I'm going to ask for a mic to go. Maybe start with the lady in the back, and then we'll come here.
Thank you. That was very interesting. I consequently want to ask you, what are some of the things that you guys did to maybe build your team together? Like, were there any activities specifically that you did to sort of build this trust? Because I think a lot of this is about, legalese and extremely brain-consuming paperwork. And so how did you do that?
I think with producers, it's time. I mean, it's really, it's not like we did some sort of trust exercise, so that maybe another time. But we didn't go in a cabin and, spend a weekend together. But we, as Emilie mentioned earlier, Adria from Fasten in Spain was across this project for many years, from early on. And I also knew Andrea a little bit from years before, and then just knew that Dyveke would be a good egg, and we just end up spending enough time over the years or months digging into the various details, so you can, I don't know, how do you trust the people you meet in your life? You just kind of spend time together and ask the questions that you have and feel like they're open and transparent in the way they talk back to you. But this has been something I've been asked before on panels as well, in terms of how to find co-producers. And sometimes you find them when you're looking for them for a specific project. But neither of these co-producers were new people to us in our life completely. So I would always recommend just getting to know producers, be that without having a project in mind, because when you do have a project that, I might shoot in Bulgaria, I might shoot in these countries, you already know someone you kind of trust in that country, and that is a massive shortcut. And I mean, we've both all done training programs.
Yeah, I think speaking of activities, doing training programs, like Kamilla and Andrea both attended ACE producers. Yeah, together, and so I done and Java and stuff like that. I think these are not only co-producers; it's friends for years and years, and it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, and Andrea and I met at Young Nordic Producers Club, like 9 years ago. So then it becomes like, oh yeah, I know this person, and then it does have a domino effect. All the people that you meet at these parties can have a domino effect as long as you kind of stay semi in touch.
I have a question, maybe I'll ask you. Obviously, there's a world in which this project could have looked very different, not as an actual co-production. You could imagine a project with a UK-based director cast that just gets financed out of the UK, and there's maybe some service happening somewhere in the world, be it Spain. You made the conscious choice to structure it as a co-production from the onset. Why did you decide that? Like, when does it make sense for a project to be a co-production, and where would you go at it alone?
We did actually, when we first met with Adria, we did talk about both scenarios, service production and co-production, because his company does both. I think when there's such a strong creative element, like, for example, the director being of that nationality, co-production, it's at least interesting to kind of explore the pros and cons of each. And in this case, we would have been happy to work with Adria as a creative partner, regardless of the official structure of the collaboration. But in this case, because Maria was Spanish, we were able to apply for majority funding from the national funding body in Spain, which we wouldn't have been able to do if it was a service production. And that was a significant amount of grant money, effectively. And, we always knew we were going to need some commercial money in the film. And I think it's probably no secret to anyone that it's getting harder and harder to get commercial investment into independent film. And so when you can come with a film that has as high as possible an amount of non-recoupable grant funding in place, it's always going to make it more attractive to the commercial funders.
Yeah, I would also add that there's no way we could raise the level of budget that we have on this film for this type of film from this super talented but first-time director without having a very large portion of unrecoupable money. Because, of course, as I'm sure the producers in the room knows, there's your budget and then there's your net budget, which means the recoupable budget. And at the end of the day, that's the budget that commercial financiers care the most about, is how much money do we need to earn back to earn our money and to get into profit. And it just wasn't possible at this budget level to do that in any other way. And the grant bit is a big factor, and also something the Global Screen Fund.
You're very welcome.
So my question was, what are your next projects? Could you all share what are the next projects you're working? Because the projects that you already launched that are especially the worst person in the world, and this one is a very anticipated one. So very curious, what are the next ones?
So Denise sort of alluded to it earlier. For Kamilla and myself, we have a project called Foxfinder, which we're shooting this summer. It's very dramatic.
It's so dramatic.
It will be okay. The shoot will be okay.
Yeah. So that is a film, another co-production. We originated it out of the UK with another production company in the UK called Rabbit Track, and it's going to be a co-production with Germany in this instance. We're shooting in Germany, and yeah, it was announced just before Cannes actually. So if you're interested in knowing more about it, you can look it up. But it's a film by a director called Aoife Mercado, British director.
Yeah, and I'll just add, that's a scenario where having friendships with other producers is useful, because whilst we did talk about Norway for that one, but it didn't make sense. But we are teamed up with Complete Sin Film in Germany, in addition to Trima Film, and Complete Sin co-produced Sentimental Value with you guys. So when we were talking about Germany, of course I rang you guys to ask, hey, how are Complete Sin to work with, and can you do an intro? And they did. So there you go.
Dyveke?
Well, we have several upcoming films. We have some in post-production right now. We have a debut all done in Norway. We are minority co-producers on Ruben Östlund's upcoming film, The Entertainment System is Down. And then we are working on, by including many others, Halvdan Ullmann Tøndel, who was here with Armand 2 years ago. So hopefully shooting late next year.
And thank you, because that was actually a great question to end on. And I have to excuse our panel because somehow they'll need to make their way to a red carpet in the rain. So unfortunately, they won't be able to hang around and take many of your questions. But if you can join me in an applause to thank them for the amazing panel.